I attended college for 4 years and dropped out only 1 year from getting my degree. Why? Well, here's the Cliff Notes backstory. I attended a private college in Ohio from 2018 to 2020 and felt really out of place there for many reasons, so I transferred to a different private college in my home state, which I attended until 2021. However, despite this new school being a conservatory and despite my getting a 4.0 that year, I felt like I wasn't learning anything useful about music, so I decided to give college one last shot and apply for UMass Amherst. When I first set foot on campus at UMass in fall 2021, it was love at first sight. Every single one of my classes was incredibly interesting. My professors were far more dedicated than I'd ever known possible, inspiring me every single day with both their knowledge and their kindness. And I soon had a close-knit friend group as well as many wonderful acquaintances. Of course, if you know anything about UMass Amherst, the food was to die for too. I knew as soon as I very first entered my dorm room and surveyed the beautiful view from my 15th floor window that I was going to be walking across the graduation stage next spring and that nothing was going to stop me. I hadn't quite made it yet, but in my heart, I already had. And then things happened. I can't get into it, but for these personal reasons, every part of me wanted to drop out at the end of fall semester. But I couldn't. I had already put in 7 semesters worth of college coursework. I had to just lock in and persevere. So that's what I did. I practiced for 8 hours a day, I gave my junior piano recital, and I finished out my semester with straight A's for the second semester in a row. But due to my circumstances, or rather one specific circumstance that completely drowned the light out of all the other ones, I had reached a mental breaking point and I dropped out of school in summer 2022. The rest is history. I started working as a cake decorator at Whole Foods that fall. When I clocked in for my first shift in September 2022, I fully both believed and hoped that I'd never care about anything or anyone ever again, which, if you've seen any videos on my channel from the past few years, is ironic in the best possible way. In any case, I worked at Whole Foods for 19 months, then switched to my current office job where I've worked for the past 16 months. All the while, I've been on a roller coaster of an emotional healing journey that kind of symbolically culminated in my getting my tattoo last month. At least that was the moment I finally realized how far I had come. But it was only over the past couple of weeks that I started having this crazy thought. What if I figured out a way to finally finish my degree at UMass? I'd keep working full-time, of course, that's a non-negotiable for me. But maybe on the side there would be a way for me to complete 1 or 2 classes at a time until I could graduate? At first I pushed the thought out of my mind. I'd been telling myself for the past 3.5 years that I would never, ever, under any circumstance, return to the campus where I'd gone through so much. Out of self-preservation, it was a sheer impossibility. But then, a couple nights ago, I had a dream that I was back on campus. In the dream, I had been transplanted back to before anything had ever happened. Back when the only thing on my mind was how amazing my classes were, how excited I was to graduate, how beautiful the morning dew looked when the sunlight hit it just right, even though I hated waking up early, and above all, this all-embodying sense of freedom, joy, and purpose that I'd never truly felt before in my life. I spent the next 12 hours deeply pondering whether I should try to visit campus, not with any specific goal in mind, just to be there. After all, if there was the remotest possibility of my finishing school, it would only be if I proved to myself that I could be on campus without having a mental breakdown. A huge part of me was screaming not to do it, but the stubborn side of me, perhaps synonymous with the strong side, wouldn't let the idea go. This morning, I decided it was now or never, so I got in the car and drove to UMass. Against all expectations, against the voice in my head that told me I was making a horrible mistake that could potentially undo years of healing, when I set foot on that campus today, it felt like something inside of me had been set free. By some miracle of God, there was no heaviness, no dissociation, no panic, only pride and joy, exactly the way it felt in my dream on Thursday night and when I first arrived at UMass exactly 4 years ago. I took my time walking through all of my favorite places. The Fine Arts Center, where I'd spent countless hours practicing in room 173, had the best piano lessons with Professor Von Sodel, enjoyed fascinating music history lectures by Professor Knight, learned how to conduct with Dr. Westgate, and rehearsed with my incredible piano quartet. I visited the beautiful lakes surrounded by wildflowers, Harvest Market where I'd had my first meal at UMass 4 years ago, and even the gigantic merch store where today I picked up a shirt for myself and a bag for Lucy covered in what I thought were rats but were actually opossums. Luckily she didn't mind. Today I was finally home again. I was at the UMass I knew before the darkness descended, the one where I wrote in October 2021, quote, "I've found myself surrounded by so much brilliance, talent, inspiration, generosity, wisdom, passion, validation and support. It's not every day that you wake up in the same vicinity as the best people you've ever met with the opportunity to learn everything you could ever want to learn. All I can do is relish every single part of this experience and embrace my growing certainty that my winding journey has brought me here for a reason, unquote. And then tonight I returned to my other home, my real home, where I get to see my best friend every single day and cook together and make fun of each other's silly quirks and support each other through thick and thin. If I do decide to finish my degree, which as I mentioned would be on top of work, I don't know how it would work logistically or what the timeline would be. But at least I know I can do it if I want. My own mentality won't be the barrier. I think it can be summed up in this realization I had in the car as I drove home today. I think what I realized is that I refuse to live the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I had just been a little braver or believed in myself a little more. I want to see what I can do, you know? I'm not good at outros, so here's a little clip of me playing piano today in the very same UMass practice room in which I prepared my junior recital years ago. The difference is that while back then I thought I'd reached the end of everything, now I realize that my life is just beginning.